You're listening to the OMG MotoGP podcast with former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Huewen and me, Amy Reynolds. And today we are joined by MotoGP's TNT reporter Nat Quirk, who is currently on maternity leave with her baby girl Neem. So firstly, Nat, congratulations.
Thank you.
And just a true demonstration for how long this bloody season is. You were actually on site for the start of it, pregnant with Neem.
Yeah.
You left around like the midway point to go and have your baby girl.
Yeah.
And you will be making it back for the final race, which we know now is not in Valencia, not confirmed, but near enough. We know it's going to be in Barcelona.
Yeah, that's
wild.
No, I'm going for the sleep. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for the break. No, yeah, I started the season pregnant, and then as it turns out, Barcelona was my last race before I stopped. I wanted to carry on a little bit longer, but I had to, under doctor's orders, had to stop. So I've been watching from home. I've been a spectator from the sofa, which it's not the same, is it? As you guys know, it's not like being there, but trying to keep on top of everything. And then I thought, well, it's the last round. It'd be nice to go back. So Neve she'll be 3 months old. So hand her to Dad, and I'm going to go to Barcelona to kind of round off the season there in a couple of weeks' time.
I can't compete with anything you two have been through when it comes to childbirth. So I'm for the first time in my entire podcast life, I'm going to keep my mouth shut on this subject. All I can say is that I missed 2 of the births of children of mine because I was at racetracks around the world, which is not ideal. Luckily, I've got a very lovely wife who put up with that kind of crap from the likes of me. So.
But you're not in the minority, Keith. You're not in the minority, Keith, because if you speak to loads of the guys that work in the paddock, quite a number of them end up missing things like this because, as we all know, babies decide when and where they're going to pop up, and it's not always when you're expecting them to be.
No, it's not like it's down the road either. I was in Japan for one of them that was born in the UK, and I was in the UK for one of them when she was born in Southeast Asia. So it's been a slight snag, but anyway, we've survived.
We're working parents, aren't we? And we're all spinning plates at times, aren't we? But we wouldn't have it any other way, would we?
No, and we can't keep away from MotoGP, especially when it's the kind of weekend that we've just had. It was, well, pretty spectacular on several fronts, really, at the end of the day. Everyone keeps saying about the rematch. We wanted the dogfight between the 2 main men and all the rest of it. We got it. It was only short, but it was good while it lasted.
I think
it was incredible. Having a newborn and being up on these flyaways during the night has actually been quite good. I can watch some of the races, and I've been up in time to watch some of them. And well, that was certainly worth getting up for, wasn't it? Those all right. The majority of the race after those first 3 or 4 laps kind of quietened down, didn't it? And wasn't much to talk about. But those opening 4 laps were just blockbuster, weren't they? Absolutely incredible.
Sepang always throws up a kind of I love Sepang, the sweat Olympics as it's known in the trade, because you absolutely are boiling from the moment you get there. Sepang is in one of those places where it just is so hot and so humid all the way through, but it's still delightful. They've got all the trees out the back, you can stand under and do your interviews and stuff, but there's no getting away from it. 35-degree heat with humidity at 80% tends to make you a little bit moist, but it all kind of started on the Friday. Sorry for the phraseology. I could see Amy cringe at that one, but it's true. It all started really on the Friday with, Friday was one of those situations we didn't really know what was going to happen and how it came out, how they were going to come out of the box. I mean, who was going to break first? Who was going to blink first in this shootout between them? And I think the significant thing for me over the weekend was the candid manner, mature manner that Jorge Martin has achieved this year. Absolutely everything on the table, about his psychologist, about his diet, about everything you want to know at the moment. I mean, Natalie, from your point of view, when you get out there, to have someone like that who is, by all intents and purposes, looking like he's going to be the world champion, what a great way to interview somebody like him that's that open, that's that transparent, that's given us the kind of modern day thinking almost, not like, we go back a bit, and it's you remember we used to talk about Mark Marquez never shows weakness, never shows pain. All of a sudden, we've gone complete Generation Z, for God's sake. And all of a sudden, we're seeing all of these flaws that these guys have and how they get over them. And that, for me, Sepang sort of signified that, and almost a new way of thinking in the paddock.
I don't think Jorge Martin has always been. I mean, I've only been in the paddock for the last 4 years, so you probably know Amy, maybe, and Keith a little bit more about the Jorge from a few years ago. But certainly, from what I've seen over the last few years, he wasn't always as perhaps open and honest and chatty with the media. I don't think he particularly enjoys doing the media as much. I think after the title rivalry last year, he came into this season. I mean, that winter must have been quite a long winter. He's had a lot of thinking time, and he took on a sports psychologist, and I sat down and did an interview with him at the start of this year, and he was very open, very honest. That was in Barcelona, actually. It was when Aleix Espargaro announced he was retiring, and Jorge came in, and he was very emotional, very, very upset. He was losing one of his best friends, you know, from the paddock. But and he was very open, very honest. Talked about his sports psychologist, and I think we've seen this year, like you say, Keith, that maturity, that different approach, perhaps not as rash in making decisions. And I don't know whether there's something to be said about him leading the championship. He's the one with he's got a target on his back. Is it easier to defend a lead rather than chasing it? I don't know. I think it's probably easier mentally chasing a target, maybe. So I think he's handled it extremely, extremely well. And like you say, I think he's done it perfectly this year. There's been mistakes from both riders, but I think he's in a position now where he's certainly got more than one hand on the trophy, hasn't he?
And he's learning from other riders around him. When Marc Marquez crashed out last time out in Thailand, he had exactly the same crash, if you like, but didn't have the crash and backed off from that point. And last weekend in Sepang, the significant thing for me was he was under pressure, not just about the pace that Pecco was prepared to go at, and he had to, but also what was coming on from behind him. He knew where Marc Marquez was. So once Marc Marquez was out of the equation when he eventually dumped it, it left Martin with this choice, and he took the correct choice. You know, it might not be the one the fans want. You know, it watered down the race at the end of the day, but he took 20 solid points as opposed to the possibility of crashing. And he was quite happy he was quite open in the Parc Fermé interviews afterwards, I think with Simon. It might have even been one of your guys, TNT guys, that he spoke to Rachel, I think. And he said once Mark had gone, it took the pressure off me. And I think that is such a significant statement. It's a nothing statement, but it's significant in that what he's got the 360-degree view of his job. And I think that comes with a certain age as well. You know, I've always thought to myself that these guys all have massive talent, but it comes at a certain time when that talent meets maturity. There's that sweet spot right in the middle there before you tip over the edge where you're not quite as fast as you were and commitment isn't quite as much as it would be by a degree. He's in that sweet spot at the moment of maturity and raw talent. And I think that it's such a bloody shame he's going to Aprilia. Honestly, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are.
It's a shame, but I think in actual fact, it gives this year so much more meaning. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen when the rules and regulation changes. It could completely change the field again in terms of who's strong as a manufacturer. So it might not be the not quite so solid choice as it looks at this present moment, but almost he's got to do it now because he's got to finish or check this box off, become the world champion that he does deserve. I think you both used a word, maturity, and that really does summarize Jorge Martin in the moment that he's living right now, because when he was younger, when Nat, you said you could tell he didn't really want to be there in the interview room. It was just that, like, kind of, he was like a puppy. He was so, like, he just wants to move on to the next thing. He wants to go and do his debrief. He wants to figure out what's going to happen. And I think you could see that, like, almost coming out. And when he was talking about the difference between this year and last year, where he was in a similar position, but he said he couldn't sleep. He felt sick. He, like, had insomnia because it was all replaying, whereas he feels really calm this year. And we all know that comes with a bit of age and a little bit of experience, that you aren't quite so in your head about everything. You've also gone through disappointment, which is what he's been through. So he's felt that disappointment before. He knows that he's going to get on and live another day after it. So all he can do is go out there and give his 110%, and that should be enough.
And he might prove that the Aprilia is a better motorbike than we think it is.
True. Yeah, I think that's fair, Keith. I think it's fair. Can I also just ask you both as well? I just thought Pecco Bagnaia this weekend must have been on such an emotional roller coaster. And was I the only one? Like, I have no vested interest in either one of them. Like, to me, it doesn't matter if Pecco wins it, if Jorge wins it. I feel like they both deserve it in elements in their own rights. However, his Pecco sprint race crash brought tears to my eyes.
It didn't bring tears to my eyes, but it was the tiniest of mistakes. I mean, if you study the footage, he just was a little inch or three tighter on turn 9, which is a notorious corner. And he just saw the front wheel just bobble, just the tiniest bit. He was just inches offline, millimeters offline. And it just looked to me from the replays and the like that I could see from obviously my own TV at home. It looked like he had a slight bobble there. And he said he made a slight mistake at the end of the day. I mean, we all want Pecco to be as close as he can be. I believe in karma, and definitely you've got to say that Jorge Martin is getting a little bit of karma. He's getting an extra dose of it because of what Ducati have done to him at the end of the day. They knocked him back for the factory ride in the first place. They didn't give him a deal that he should have had perhaps after his Pramac performances, and fair dues to Camionoli and Campionotti and co. I mean, like, it'll be the first world championship that they've won, a riders' world championship, if you manage to pull it off as well. But the point being is that there's a little bit of karma here somewhere in that the Ducati. Davide Tardozzi might have said that it doesn't mean that much because the number 1 plate going to another manufacturer because he won it on a Ducati. Bullshit. There's nothing like having a number 1 plate on your Ducati at the end of the day, because it makes all those PR and posters everywhere around the world look that much better when it's got a number 1 plate on it and you've got the number 1 rider that's riding for you. So I think that they're perhaps being a little bit disingenuous when it comes to it doesn't mean anything to them. Yeah, okay, they will be the manufacturers' champions. They will be, the championship winners with the rider, but they must feel, I don't know why, they must feel some guilt, something that regret that they've made the mistake of a man who's maturing into what is a real weapon. And of course, if that Aprilia does happen to be better than perhaps it's being shown as being at the moment through the inconsistency of their 4 riders right now, if it does turn out to be half the bike that it's sort of had flashes of, it could be Aprilia could kick their ass next year. And Ducati will live to regret their poor decisions when it comes to Jorge Martin's positioning.
I think he's got a point to prove, hasn't he? I think he's learned a lot from the experience of being in that title race with Pecco last season. He's made changes, and he's gone through the disappointment of not getting the factory Ducati seat, losing out to Enea first of all, and now to Marc Marquez. And I think his whole approach this year has been a lot calmer, like you say, and much more mature, as we've said. Having said that, I mean, as much as I thoroughly was entertained by those opening 4 laps, there was part of me thinking he doesn't need to do that. They were so on the edge, weren't they? They both took so much risk, and from a neutral perspective, it was fantastic to see them slug it out, the pair of them. I even watched it back, and I counted 14 overtakes in those opening 3 or 4 laps. It was just phenomenal, but they were both taking so much risk. And Pecco, you can understand, he had to go all out because of what happened in the sprint to keep the championship alive. But the entertainment between the two of them was brilliant.
It runs on adrenaline at that point. It's all on instinct. There's no real thinking about it. Once you get into a dogfight like that, it becomes snap and snap back. We've seen it before with Dovi and Marquez when they've been in a similar situation. In fact, it reminded me quite a lot of Dovi and Marquez, to be honest. And that moves us really to next year when Marquez joins the Ducati camp as well. Pecco is going to be under siege. Bless him.
There were questions asked of Pecco of why he didn't back the field up a little bit, Keith.
Yeah, I've seen this before. Freddie Spencer, Eddie Lawson and Kenny Roberts versus Freddie Spencer back in the dim and distant two-stroke days. When Eddie beat Kenny at, I think it was Yugoslavia. We've even had changes of countries since those days. It's amazing. The world map has changed since two-stroke racing back in the day. But I remember thinking at the time that Lawson took points off of Kenny Roberts, and then of course Kenny Roberts needed those points at the end of the championship as well. It is, and there were questions whether Eddie should have, when we got to Imola, I think it was, where they were trying. He should have really. It was a situation where one or the other of us should have been backing up Freddie into to Kenny, but Eddie didn't have the pace at the time. It's all very well. Once your concentration is broken into another mode, if you like, it's a bit like watching a pit board and then sort of thinking, I've got a 5-second lead, I'll just start rolling it back a little bit. All of a sudden, it becomes too much. I don't know. I mean, I think that's always an easy thing to say. But once you've got a rhythm and once you're into that pace, I'm not sure it's as easy as perhaps people might think.
He said afterwards, didn't he, that it's not in his kind of nature, it's not his character to perhaps employ those kind of tactics. And I suppose that, like he said, with it, he doesn't want any help from anybody. He doesn't want Anaya to help him out. He's that well. So
he ain't going to get any.
Well, yeah, he can't get any, and it'd be interesting to see what happens in Barcelona as well. But yeah, I think he's always said, if I'm going to win a title, if I'm going to win a championship, I want to do it my way, in a clean, fair way. And I get that, and from Pecco.
That is perfect Pecco, isn't it? Mm. That's just the embodiment of his character.
But it's also the fact that he knows damn well that he isn't going to get any help from Anaya. Anaya's off to another company anyway, and he's already said he isn't going to give him any help. So at the end of the day, they're self-fulfilling facts at the end of the day. And Todozzi has said there'll be no team orders. That's because it's pointless. You can give a team order, but when your rider's clearing off somewhere else, he just wants to win races at the end of the day. So and Anaya, I don't think will be. I'm sure he won't be. He certainly won't be getting in his way, but. He ain't going to do him any real big favours.
But also, I think the two of them showed at the weekend, they're just a class above the rest of the field, aren't they? Yeah. Those two this year.
Yeah. How much, Keith, do you think the fact that, Marquez has been crashing a little bit more recent. Well, he has been crashing. Do you think that is like the difference between the 23 and 24 bike at that circuit? Like, there's just nothing matching him. He pushes
boundaries like no one else I've ever seen on a motorbike. Whether he's got the fastest motorbike out there or the slowest motorbike out there, he still pushes boundaries to the very, very edge, and he's just tempted into it. I think we've got a bit of a disparity tyre-wise at the moment as well. The amount of grip we're getting from the rear end is pushing the front a lot now, and that has been an issue that the riders have been trying to work their way around. And it's been very graphic in the last two Grand Prix, because we've got some great fast straights at Thailand and in Sepang, just how slow the 23 bike is in a straight line in comparison. Now, whether that's just because the way the ride height adjustment on the 24 bikes is just that much more workable, and it sits down and it drives very, very quick off the corner. And like I said in our last pod, if you're 2 or 3 mile an hour quicker off the corner, you're going to be 5 or 6 mile an hour quicker by the end of the straight, and that nowadays is a huge amount. So it does make quite a bit of difference. And the only place you can ever make up that is turn in, like that initial trail break into the corner, and then you risk everything. You're putting everything on the front, and the second you overstep the mark in one way or another, and Mark does push. Blimey, that boy pushes every single way. And if he's in that same mood in 2025, I come back to the Frankie Carcetti quote. You've never seen anything like that. You just have no idea what's coming when that boy gets on the factory bike. And he's the guy that's reading his data and working with him all the time. And if he's saying that, then I believe.
Now, that was Pecco's 10th win in this one season, which is really stunning in itself. There's only another handful of riders that have achieved that. But from when you've been speaking with him in the past, I got the impression, because he made a specific reference saying that, because I'm counting wins on a Sunday because those are the ones that actually count. And then he also included in his answer something about, we need to be faster on a Saturday. I get the general overall impression that he hates these sprint races.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to when the sprints were first introduced and what his impression and thoughts were. I don't think he is. When they were first announced, I think we all collectively said, "Well, this is made for Jorge Martin because he's explosive, he's he's got the speed, and in qualifying how well he does, and Pecco as well, but perhaps more suited to Jorge Martin, and I suppose that's proved to be the case. He's been the king of the sprint, hasn't he, Jorge Martin? Pecco, yeah, he seems to struggle, and he said he's not sure why, and this year he said, Saturdays need to be better, and he's still saying that now at the end of the season. He said what? He's had 6 sprint wins. Jorge's had 7. It's the DNFs, I think, for Pecco, though. It's the falls. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, but that is potentially what has cost him this season. But there does seem to be a stumbling block with the Saturday. He's certainly a Sunday man, as you say. 10 Grand Prix wins. He's amongst a handful of riders that have done that, and he could be the rider, with 10 Grand Prix wins that doesn't win the world title, which seems, which is incredible, isn't it? I think it's the most wins without winning a title. So he really does need to get the Saturdays nailed down. He seems to be slower to get up to, I don't know, pace or speed a weekend. It was his best Friday, actually, this weekend since Assen, I think it was. He's normally slower, comes into the weekend a little bit slower to get to grips with things. And I'm not sure. I mean, what is the biggest difference between a Saturday and a Sunday? Yeah, okay, the laps, but the weight of the bike, obviously. Keith, perhaps you know a bit more about...
Pecco is perfection. Pecco works towards perfection, whereas Jorge Martin tends to ride pretty much whatever he ends up with on the day. And I think that is probably the key. You're right. Everything you've said there is bang on. And I think he works through his Friday and his Saturday to his Sunday. He might be focusing on the sprints, but there's only one difference between them. I mean, the fact that Jorge's only won 3 Grand Prix on a Sunday compared with the 10, and yet he's still leading by 24 points. I think really Pecco's focus ought to have been on the non-finishes, like you've said. I mean, at the end of the day, 29 podiums for Martin, 23 for Pecco, and that's what makes a difference. If you're going to win a championship over 20 rounds, you're going to have to be consistently there or thereabouts. And I think that's where Jorge Martin, and again, that feeds into the psychology of this job. The guy is that strong now that he's able to keep that momentum going, take the points that he needs, rather than win it or bin it scenario isn't going to do it in the situation we're in. Going back to when they first started sprints, I don't think there was anybody trackside that really wanted those sprints. I think from a fan perspective, we all wanted those sprints. They've enlivened the Saturday, but it's compressed the workload on a Friday. And they've had to muck about again this year to try and get so that the time practices don't mean qualifying. You're qualifying for qualifying all the way through those early sessions, or you were until they took the clout out of the first 2 sessions of practice. So you can actually test without that penalising your position for qualifying. So, I mean, things have changed slightly, but it's compressed everybody's workloads. Rider workload, particularly data and data engineer workload. And that's another thing, I think. It's a fairly minute thing, I think, but worth from us lot being in the paddock, we'll all be aware of it. The size of the Pramac team, data acquisition, data dissemination, is much different to the factory team. The factory team have more guys. They're all talented, but the factory team have the best, and there's more of them to work out all of those things that are going on in that early. And I wonder sometimes whether there's data overload. Pecco might be better off being in Pramac, where it's a bit more relaxed and you can only get so much done. So there you go, chap. Off you go. That's the best we can do for you as it is at the moment. I'm sure they don't put it that way, but you know where I'm going with it. But whereas Pecco, every little nuance, every tiny millionth of a second extra spare they're working on. And it isn't until bloody Sunday when they've all got their head around it and the bike is absolutely pin sharp, perhaps. I don't know.
I think I listened to a piece with Davide Tardozzi on TNT Sports, and interestingly enough, Keith and I in the last review, had pretty much put that out there as an idea of Pecco chases perfection, Jorge Martin's a bit more of a rider that will ride what's underneath him. And Todd Dotsey near enough confirmed that and reiterated those exact words. So how you go about changing that next year, I don't know. But picking back off of something you were saying, Keith, does Pecco need to go for a win it or bin it in Barcelona in the final race of the year?
Yeah, of course he does. The same as he had last weekend. I mean, that race on Sunday, Nat's already said it. The impressive thing was that Jorge Martin was up for the challenge, when probably second place should have been there. But I think he was, Jorge Martin had got it worked out. He knew that Marc Marquez could have been a spoiler. If Marc Marquez had got between them, then suddenly the points race is back on. As it is at the moment, he's managed it very well with 20 points. But if it had been 16, all of a sudden you're only 20 points, moving into the final round, and you can lose 20 points fairly easily if things don't go according to plan. Catalonia, we talked about Sepang has turn 9 and turn 15s that are the nemesis of many, many riders. He can catch you out for no good reason. We saw Pecco do it in the sprint race. He fell over on that one. But we've got the same situation in Catalonia. Turn 5 is a nightmare. The amount of that downhill left-hander, the amount of riders that fall over in that particular corner. So there are opportunities in Catalonia for it all to go completely wrong as well. Hopefully it doesn't. But, our hearts, I have to say this, all of our hearts and thoughts are obviously with the Valencia and the Valencian region. And Spain in general, they've had it awful from Menorca right the way across that region, all the way down the south coast. Has been an absolute nightmare. Got to remember as well, a lot of these teams and personnel that are in Grand Prix come from the Valencia region. They're from that area. So they've probably got family hiccups and stuff going on as well there. But from a sporting perspective, much rather see it at Catalonia than Valencia anyway. Better racetrack from my point of view, from a racing point of view.
I think
finish the race.
Yeah, I think the right decision was made, wasn't it? In the end, there was everything was thrown up in the air, obviously, and our thoughts are with everybody in Valencia. It's just tragic what's happened there. It's really awful what we're seeing happening over there, and a lot of the paddock would have been deeply affected by that over the weekend. Like you said, there's a big Spanish contingent, and thoughts would have been with them all weekend. So yeah, I think it was right that we don't go racing. It pales into insignificance, doesn't it? Racing. So I'm pleased that they've moved it. I think it's good that it's gone to Barcelona so that people who would maybe due to go to Valencia can perhaps go to Barcelona and see the final round of the season. But like you say, that can throw up some hurdles, can't it? Could be cold there. We know Barcelona's low grip. I was looking back at the stats actually, and I can't see that Jorge Martinez won a race at Barcelona, and Pecco didn't have a podium until he won earlier this year. But Pecco's just got to throw everything at it. He's got to throw everything at it right from Friday. We saw some mind games last year, didn't we, between Pecco and Jorge on that last race of the season. If you remember, was it in qualifying or in the warm up, and they were following each other on the track? And I think, well, we could see some of that as well. But yeah, Pecco's just got to throw everything at it, hasn't he?
I love the way Jorge Martin is dealing with keeping your enemies close. Whenever you see him on the slowing down lap, he's giving loads of respect to Pecco. They're slapping hands and it's all very wonderful in Parc Ferme and the like. And that just, I can't remember the exact phrase, but keeping your enemies close is always a good way. Don't give them a reason to want to fight with you. Don't give them that extra percentage of hating you and wanting to beat you into a situation. So I think Jorge Martin has got it absolutely right at the moment. He is the weapon, the whole, I'd have never said this about him at the beginning of the season. It's been a remarkable turnaround that when I said he's got the 360 surround sound, got everything worked out, right down to the psychology of things, even on the slowing down lap. I'm so bloody impressed with him. He certainly deserves a championship. No doubt.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
That's the one. Thank you. I could see you both building up for that.
No, I wasn't. I was just thinking to myself, because I was actually just thinking back in history. And I was like, do you think we're just like in the age of sports psychologists? Because these hot-headed motorcycle racers in the past would not be going, well done for you on the cooling down lap. It would have been like...
Well, it would have been the Eddie Lawson kick or the... The amount of times I've seen people get punched on the slowing down lap. Like, if I had £1 for everyone, I'd be better off than I am.
Well, even Pedro Acosta says we need to spice things up. We need to have more rivalries. We need to have more enemies, and just to make it a bit, we need a panto villain, don't we?
Well,
because everyone's being friendly.
Everyone's going to their sports psychologist every single week who's like, be the bigger man, like don't show your emotions. That's the truth, strength, and like da 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 da. We're like, no, come on. Blow it out the window. We want friggin' all of it.
You two imagine what it's like for an old fella like me when we get to that kind of conversation, because I'm completely old school and I remember as it was. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, or I'm not taking a line on it particularly, but I bloody well enjoyed all of that.
I did too. I have to say, I feel like I wasn't going to mention it, but might as well because it's come up in conversation now. But I was thinking to myself, because I saw a piece of like content that MotoGP had filmed with Jorge Martin, and it's him like reading this letter, I think from his girlfriend. And I was like, am I just miserable and grumpy? But why am I like so turned off by that? I do not watch motorcycle racing. Literally, I was like, I do not watch motorcycle racing for that. I want the raw emotion. That's why I like it, because it's organic. It's not like all composed in a studio and filmed and set up. When they cry and when something means to them, it's because it's like they've put their life on the line for it. I don't want to watch freaking Jorge Martin reading a love letter from his girlfriend. Sorry to be that person right now.
I'm glad you bloody said it.
I hate it. So cringe.
Brilliant, Amy. Absolutely brilliant.
Sorry, that was my rant out of the way for the week. I'll try and hold my tongue for next week. Soz about that, guys. Anyway, I do want to pick out something that happened. Obviously, there was a restarted race on Sunday because there was an awful incident involving Jack Miller, Brad Binder, Fabio Quartararo. Fabio Quartararo actually did manage to line up again for race 2, but the real concern was over Jack Miller and like thanking, whoever we need to thank, but he actually sounds pretty okay, but that could have been awful.
Thanks to luck, I think. I mean, Quartararo said it was like someone had stuck his back brake on, because his helmet went right up between the back wheel and the undercarriage. Anyone that's seen Jack Miller crash at Le Mans at the first couple of will remember just how tough that guy is. I mean, he was lucky. There's no doubt about it. And it was the trouble, I suppose, if there is a trouble with Sepang, is that first and second turn there is bloody tight, and to get 22 bikes through there, full tanks, it is a tricky one. Binder got thumped, I think, and it just had the knock-on effect. But when you've got bikes falling over in the middle of a pack, that's the danger area. There's nothing you can do about that, particularly safety-wise or any other way. But to see Jack walking with Ruby afterwards, you just think, bloody hell, what is he made of? Rock.
They're certainly made of different stuff, aren't they? Yeah, watching that crash and then the subsequent replay, it was heart in your mouth. You praying that everything was okay. And yeah, I think the racing gods were perhaps looking over Jack, because it looked horrendous. He's so lucky to be able to walk away from that. And like I say, his head got caught in the back of Fabio Quartararo's machine, and I think Joan Mir said he ran over his legs as well. I think Neil Hodgson managed to grab a quick word with Jack afterwards, and he said, "Oh, I just went for a sleep." So, I mean, fingers crossed, as long as he passes all the concussion tests, when we'll see him in Barcelona. But that is remarkable after that crash. And I think there was a huge round of applause when everybody saw Jack walking back. There was a huge cheer, wasn't there? And just a huge sigh of relief that he's okay. And I think Brad's hurt his shoulder, hasn't he? And so he couldn't take part in the restart. But yeah, that was not a pleasant watch at all.
Yeah, it didn't sink into Brad until after the warm-up lap, did it? When he went out for the restart and he came down pit lane and he realised this isn't quite on. We'll take a bit of a rest for that. And then we had the start, which the second start, I've got to say, Jorge Martin, uncharacteristically, it didn't quite get off the line. When you ask for a second start on those clutches, Sometimes they're a little bit inconsistent, and Bagnaia got the perfect start. And on that occasion, Jorge Martin got beaten down into turn one, virtually because of the factory Ducati just getting off the line a little bit neater than usually. Jorge Martin's the man that blasts off into turn one first.
Why are the clutches inconsistent?
All bloody hell let loose.
Sorry to interrupt, right, Keith. Why are those clutches inconsistent on the second go?
Well, they're only really made for one or two starts. Like the thing is that they are just what they are. It's a racing motorcycle. Everything has got a life to it and an expectancy to it. So when you've dumped the clutch and you've got that bite point and everything else, don't forget that the way they launch is completely different to how it used to be. So as soon as you put one cycle through it, they are slightly different on a second cycle, really, and it does make a difference. So in this case, maybe that was the reason why Jorge Martin didn't quite get off the line quite as well as he perhaps would have liked to have done.
Do they change the clutch every single race?
Yeah, they'll certainly change the clutch. Yeah, I mean they'll change. There's all sorts of stuff that they change at certain mileage all the way through those bikes.
Oh yeah, of course.
Everything gets changed. So, but the life of every single part of a racing motorcycle is worked out and adjusted accordingly. They're rotating the engines throughout the year as well to motors that are giving slightly different power in different places. They might put a track that suits that. Every motorbike, even though it's built the same, always feels different. You could have two bikes that are built exactly the same, two motors that are built exactly the same, and they will have different feels to them. And a rider, we always used to laugh about it because I always would want, that engine in that chassis. And then we get to next week, I want that engine in that chassis because they kind of work better on wherever you were. And I'm sure it's not quite like that nowadays as it obviously was. There was more room for massive mistakes in engineering and setup back in the day. Nowadays, everything is so bloody computerized and worked through on data that you can there's nothing that those bikes do. I mean, if you farted halfway around the course, they'd have it on a data logger. Every single thing you do, every single press, push, pull, your data engineer can look it up. Oh, bloody hell, you need a different diet.
Less fibre. Shall we take a look now at our Moto3 and Moto2 races this weekend? Let's start off with Moto3. Why not? Baby Goat.
Which you're a big fan of, Amy.
Big fan of also. But to be fair, as somebody pointed out, he is actually now officially the greatest rider in that lightweight category. So maybe I should dial my opinion down a notch or two. And he was perfection, wasn't he? Again, really, I felt really sorry for Osato again because I feel like he's done so much work over this season. But when you're going up against someone like David Alonso, you haven't got a hope in hell, have you?
Even when he's 11th back with a couple of laps to go, you still know it's on for David Alonso, don't you? He's been incredible. He's been so impressive, hasn't he, this year? When you think about all the wins he's had this year, I think he's had more wins, hasn't he, than Acosta.
Yeah, he's had more wins than anybody.
I think he's 5th on the list of the current Grand Prix riders for
13 wins
race wins. Oh, it's just been incredible. His racecraft is so impressive. 18 years old, and he's just as likable off the track as he is on the track, isn't he? But yeah, he's been streets ahead of everybody. But like you say, for Osato, I felt a little bit sorry for him. He was so close at the end, wasn't he?
And he deserves one. There's no doubt about it. But as long as the baby goat doesn't start reading letters from his girlfriend, we'll be all right.
How do you think he'll do in Moto2?
He's obviously a talent. At the end of the day, I think that transcend. At the end of the day, you move up through the ranks. I think there's a bigger gap now between Moto3 and Moto2 than there ever was before. Moto2 is obviously a lot closer to MotoGP now, both technically and physically. But he's just one of those guys that I'm pretty confident he's going to make the move, and it's going to be a transition that works for him. whether he can go the full distance, we'll find out over the next couple of years. But it was sitting in Moto3, but, you know, Danny Kent won everything first half of the season. Couldn't be touched. You know, look, he won the World Championship at the end of the year, but he couldn't translate after that. You know, various personal problems and the like that he had as well. So there are other forces at work sometimes behind a rider. You know, hopefully everything, his management and everybody will be putting him in the right place, putting him in the right frame of mind, getting him prepared properly for it. But the baby goat might turn into a fully fledged goat at some later stage in his life. Well, long way to go, though. Long way to go. So much can happen between now and then. And the Acosta thing has got to be something that most up and coming riders have got to look to. A rookie in MotoGP, brilliant start. You know, predictions of maybe even a race win at some stage during the course. It hasn't quite happened for him this year, but Acosta really has performed in the way that we kind of expected him to, but you're never sure until you actually see it in real time. He's been bloody brilliant, I think. I can't wait. Moto2, my hearts and thoughts goes to Jake Dixon. Jake Dixon, I mean, he had a really hard time in, I think, was it free practice 2, was it? I think when he had that off.
The high
it
side.
looked like it would hurt him. And I remember thinking that is going to wreck his weekend at a place like this, because you're already sweating enough, let alone sweating through pain. But that mistake at the end when he should have been podium, and he just rolled it off. We saw Aleix Espargaro. Yeah, I was scratching my head, actually. In fact, did Julian Ryder actually write back to me? I sent him a message at 1 o'clock this morning. He has. Hang on a second, let me look.
1 o'clock this morning? What we did at 1 o'clock this morning?
Oh, I don't sleep. You know that, Amy. Well, you don't know that, Amy. Sorry, I should rephrase that. Emily thought him in up. No, it was one of them ones where we had another rider. I think it was at Brno. I said, "Oh, Julian Simon at Barcelona." Da 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 da. Oh no, he's Jules hasn't quite got total recall. I'll have to have a little word with him later on. But I could swear there was a Moto3 rider who rolled off for the last lap and then had to gas it up again and ended up finishing 10th or something. But I mean, Jake will be kicking himself because podiums are important for your sponsor, for your team. But somehow he misread his board and rolled off and was just riding down the track. Everybody going by. But he still pulled in. Did he get fourth in the end?
Fourth, yeah. I mean, he did well to do that, didn't he?
I was about to say, yeah, exactly.
It reminded me very much, like you say, Keith, of Aleix Espargaro in Barcelona a couple of years ago. Oh, it was just...
that was bad.
Oh, it was heartbreaking. And Jake said there was something... He had the wrong message on his dash, I think, as well. It wasn't a team problem. But you could see when he went back, he went straight to the back of the box, didn't speak to anybody. You knew how upset, understandably, he was, because that was, the podium was right there for him. So,
call me old school. Call me old school, but you don't kind of roll it off until you see a checkered flag.
Yeah. Oh, that one's gonna hurt for a little bit, isn't it?
A little bit.
Especially
because
they
went. It could have been for the win.
Yeah.
But also
another
then,
couple of laps. Yeah.
But
he'll
also
never do it again.
But I think also the other thing was obviously it went to his team. Like third went to Ethan Guevara, his teammate. Imagine the team dynamic. Exactly. Like, what do you do if you're in that team? Because you can't like celebrate too much. But equally, it was his first Moto2 podium.
Yeah, knowing Jake, he'll be more pissed off about the bonus money that he won't get.
Yeah, that was a hard one to take, I'm sure, for Jake.
Obviously, the winner of the Moto2 race was Celestino Vietti, and he did it in some style, actually. It was not style in terms of he had to really work hard for it, but it was pretty much a clean sweep, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Celestino Vietti, but I think the most impressive part of that was Jorge Navarro coming in as a substitute off of World Supersports. He came in from World Supersports to have a ride on the American racing team, subbing for Joe Roberts, and he ends up. I mean, and they were 1 and 2 on the bloody grid as well, weren't they? The American race team, I think. Fairly sure of that. Yeah, they were, because Marcos Ramirez was. So it was
on
one
pole, wasn't it?
American racing team on the grid. So it was a fairly big old weekend for them, considering they've been in the doldrums for most of the year.
Yeah, really, really impressive, wasn't he? And to replace just someone that's really taken the opportunity with both hands, hasn't he? And it just really worked for him this week. And yeah, I was really impressed with him. Never won a race before, and yeah, really impressed by him.
So
Barcelona.
I was going to say, well, a couple of weeks' time, we will be at the final race of 2024. Can you believe it? It has been a long old season. The championship, has concertinaed more than we could have ever imagined right at the very start of this season. But I'm going to put you both on the spot right now. You'd be a brave man to bet against Jorge Martin, but we've seen stranger things happen in this championship over the course of history. So, Nat, Jorge Martin, Pecco Bagnaia, which way are you going?
Unsurprisingly, I'm going to go for Jorge Martin. I think from everything that we've said, throughout the podcast, just the way he's approached this year, he's seems to have changed a lot. He's grown up a lot. He's learned from last season. Like we said, it could be the last time he fights for a title for maybe a couple of years. We don't know. We'll have to see how the Aprilia is next season and beyond. But it could be his last opportunity for a little bit. He's in the driving seat. These next 2 weeks are going to be testing for him, I think. Last year, like you said, he was feeling sick. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat properly. He was nervous. And I'm sure there'll be some nerves going into that weekend as well. But I think he's done enough now to see it across the line. I think now's the time to spend time with family and friends and try and relax and not think too much about it. I think that will be hard. That will be really hard. But he's in the driving seat, and I think we'll see him be the new world champion in a couple of weeks' time.
Keith, any small bit of hope for Pecco Bagnaia?
No, there's always hope. I mean, anyone that comes back from a 90-odd point deficit to win a world title back in the day, yeah, there is always hope. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to say what Nat said.
You pointed the wrong way. I just realised she might be on a different part of the screen.
Oh. Yeah. Anybody not watching it on YouTube wonder what the hell we're on about. You can watch this on YouTube, by the way, if you're on an audio platform.
Can I just ask you one question before we round things off, Nat? Have you enjoyed this season in terms of its action as a whole? Have you found it enjoyable?
Yeah, really enjoyable. I was obviously when it was confirmed that Marc Marquez was going to Gresini, I think the anticipation of this year, was such that I just couldn't wait to get started again back in March, whenever it was. And I remember right at the start of the season, we had some incredible races. I'm thinking back to Kota. We had an incredible race there. I think Jerez we did. It was so close, and Mark was getting stuck in like with Pecco and Jorge, and really enjoyed. We had such a great start to the championship. I've missed not being there. I have to say, as much as I've enjoyed the family time and being at home, it's not the same watching from the sofa. So. Yeah, those first few races were incredible to be there, and I think it's been a really good championship, and it's coming to a peak again I think I like the fact that we've got a decider in the final round as well. I'll be nervous. I'll be nervous for them, but yeah, for the third year in a row, we've got a title decider on the last weekend, and for the championship, I think that's great, and I'm already looking forward to next year. This year's not even finished yet, but I'm already looking forward to Marc Marquez being on the Factory Ducati and all the changes that we're going to see, how Jorge is going to go on the Aprilia and such like. So, but yeah, let's get this year done first. But I have enjoyed it. I've just missed not being there for a big chunk of it.
I have to do my research in the pub nowadays, and tonight when I leave you guys today. I'm going to be off to Chris Herring's pub in Barton Seagrave near Kettering, and we're meeting up with Mark Lloyd, who works for KTM now, as you know. Mark was originally with Repsol Honda and various, and his wife, who is Karen Atkins, whose two children run PBM, Paul Bird Motorsport, obviously run Glen Irwin. Not that this is ever incestuous, of course. And Ben Atkins is there with wife June as well tonight. It's a comedy night at Chris's pub. It will be comedian. With these guys out there for sure. But that's where the information that I now glean usually is down the pub still. You meet all these guys, and it's the same at a racetrack. There's the bit I miss is like you saying that, being on site. You go around the various hotel bars or wherever it is, and you bump into Yamaha guys, you bump into KTM guys, to Ducati guys. They don't mix like they used to. Before, you would have all the teams that would all be drinking beer together or eating together or whatever, and no doubt swapping stories and information. All that got contractually knocked out years ago. So nowadays, you have to be satisfied with landing on a Yamaha type situation. Actually, while I think of Yamaha, interestingly, that they didn't run that new motor that they tested in Misano that was supposedly giving them all the kind of horsepower that they wanted. They ended up running the one they've always run so far this year in Sepang, just as an aside. But yeah, information at trackside, Natalie, that is no better. It's the one thing that you're right. I miss it like mad. You've been missing it. You're going back. I'm going to rely on you for the info.
Have a great final race of the season now and enjoy being back there and soaking in all the atmosphere. I mean, we're all hoping it's going to be absolutely fireworks. I've got absolutely zero idea of all the permutations. Does Jorge Martin need just like 2 points from the sprint race and then it's done, or is there a bit more to it?
I think if he wins the sprint, that's it, isn't it? It's done. But who do you think, Amy? Who's your money on?
I think you just have to be a brave man to bet against Jorge Martin. I can't see it not going his way. But just for the story, I'm always the story. Like, I never have any really strong allegiances with any particular rider, especially because like most of the current guys now are all the guys that I kind of like grew up. They were all like Moto3 and under when I first joined the championship. So I really do feel like I kind of like come up through them with them. So I don't have any like strong kind of support for any one rider. It's just more the story. I love it. Well, I love a good story.
How about for the trolls on OMGMotoGP, Marc Marquez, 2025 world champion?
Keith's just throwing that out there because he loves the Marc Marquez reaction.
I like to see the comments below.
It's got no reference to where we are in this season. Right, listen. Thank you so much for listening to this week's OMG MotoGP podcast. That was the Malaysian Grand Prix, the penultimate race of 2024. We will, of course, be back with more later on this week, but do not miss us previewing the final race of the season, Barcelona, a couple weekends' time. But for myself, Keith and Nat, for now, it's a very goodbye. Have a good one.